"Please, just make it quick," the black woman whispered as dawn broke over the desert town. But the towering mountain man stepped forward and did the unexpected. He offered his calloused hand instead of watching her hang. The crowd had already decided her fate. To them, she was nothing more than a convenient scapegoat for their missing money and dead livestock, her intelligence dismissed, her protests silenced by their hunger for swift frontier justice. The noose awaited at sunrise. But the grizzled stranger who'd ridden into town possessed dangerous knowledge of territorial law and hidden legal loopholes that could shatter their mob's certainty. His intervention would bind their lives together in ways neither anticipated, forcing an unlikely alliance between two outcasts against a web of corruption that reached deeper than a simple theft. Would his desperate gamble save an innocent woman, or would it doom them both to a fate worse than the rope? The dust kicked up by the stagecoach had barely settled when Etta Mee Harper stepped onto the wooden planks of Copper Ridge's Main Street. Her worn leather satchel contained everything she owned: letters of recommendation folded carefully in oiled cloth, a lifetime's worth of sewing supplies, the last of her savings wrapped in a faded handkerchief. The Arizona Territory sun beat down mercilessly on the struggling mining settlement. Weathered buildings lined the single dirt road like broken teeth. Men in dusty work clothes paused their conversations to stare. Women peered from behind curtains with curious eyes. Etta straightened her shoulders and walked toward the general store. The sign above the door read "Brennan's Mercantile" in faded paint. A bell chimed as she pushed inside. Mrs. Brennan looked up from behind the counter. Her Irish accent softened the edges of her words. "Help you with something, dear?" Etta placed her letters on the scarred wooden surface. "I'm looking for work as a seamstress. These are my references from back east." The older woman adjusted her spectacles and read carefully. Her weathered fingers traced the neat handwriting. "Says here you can handle fine embroidery work." "Yes, ma'am. Alterations, repairs, custom garments, whatever folks might need." Mrs. Brennan studied her face. "Room above the store's been empty 6 months. Rent's fair if you're willing to help with inventory now and then. I'd be grateful for the opportunity." The door chimed again. A tall man with silver-streaked hair filled the doorway. His clothes were well-made despite the desert dust. A silver watch chain glinted across his vest. "Mrs. Brennan." He tipped his hat. "Heard we might have a new seamstress in town. John Tyler, meet Miss Harper. She's got fine recommendations." Tyler's smile was practiced and warm. "Welcome to Copper Ridge, Miss Harper. I'm the foreman for the mining cooperative. Always good to see skilled folks settling here." "Thank you, Mr. Tyler." He gestured toward the street. "Hope you'll find our little community welcoming. We work hard and look out for each other." Mrs. Brennan handed back the letters. "I'll show you the room. It's modest but clean." Etta followed her up the narrow stairs. The space was small but had good light from 2 windows. A bed, a table, and a chair were the only furnishings. "It's perfect," Etta said. "Folks here are decent enough," Mrs. Brennan said. "Keep to yourself at first. Let them get used to seeing you around." Over the following days, word spread about the new seamstress. Women brought torn dresses and loose buttons. Men needed pants hemmed and shirts mended. Etta's steady fingers worked magic on damaged garments. She charged fair prices and finished work quickly. Her embroidery was finer than anything the town had seen. Delicate flowers bloomed across collar edges. Intricate patterns transformed plain cloth into something special. But Etta noticed things others missed. Tyler's clothes were expensive for a mining foreman's wages. His boots were handmade leather. His watch looked costly. He claimed to live simply but dressed like a man of means. She watched him from her window sometimes. He visited the mining office at odd hours, carried heavy saddlebags that clinked when he walked, met with strangers who rode in after dark and left before dawn. Mrs. Brennan brought her tea one evening. "You're settling in well. People have been kind. Tyler especially. He's been singing your praises all over town." Etta set down her needle. "He seems prosperous for a foreman." "Oh, he handles all the cooperative's business, buying supplies, managing funds." Keeps everything organized. Mrs. Brennan paused, though I sometimes wonder how he affords such nice things on his salary. Maybe he has family money. Maybe. Mrs. Brennan didn't sound convinced. The town's acceptance felt fragile. Etta had invested everything in this fresh start. Her savings were nearly gone. The room rent and basic supplies consumed most of her earnings. If the work dried up or the townspeople turned against her, she had nowhere else to go. She'd heard stories from other settlements. How quickly hospitality could turn to suspicion. How outsiders became convenient targets when trouble arose. The thought kept her awake some nights, listening to the desert wind rattle her windows. Tyler stopped by the store regularly. Always friendly, always asking about her work. Sometimes his questions felt too probing. Did she enjoy exploring the area? Had she visited the mining office? What did she think of the town's business prospects? Etta answered politely but kept her observations to herself. The expensive clothes, the late-night meetings, the way his eyes calculated more than his smile revealed. She focused on building her reputation one careful stitch at a time. Every perfect hem was an investment in her future. Every satisfied customer was protection against whatever storms might come. The work was honest. The pay was fair. But something in Copper Ridge felt precarious, like a house of cards waiting for the wrong breath of wind. If you are enjoying this story of how one woman's arrival will change a desert town forever, don't forget to comment where you are tuning in from to show how this story can connect us across any distances, backgrounds, and hearts. Because what will happen in the next 15 minutes in Copper Ridge will completely change everything Etta thought she knew about trust and survival. The scream that shattered the morning calm came from behind the mining office. Etta dropped her sewing and rushed to the window. Men were running toward the sound, their voices carrying panic and anger. She grabbed her shawl and hurried outside. A crowd had gathered around Tyler's prize stallion. The magnificent black horse lay motionless in the dirt, its eyes glassy and unseeing. Foam crusted around its muzzle. Poisoned, Dr. Mitchell announced after examining the animal. Some kind of plant toxin. Tyler knelt beside his horse, his face a mask of grief and rage. Thunder was worth more than most folks see in a year. Someone's going to pay for this. The crowd murmured agreement. Suspicious glances darted between neighbors. Who would do such a terrible thing? That's not the worst of it, Tyler said, rising slowly. He held up a broken lockbox. $3,000 from the cooperative fund is missing. Our entire winter reserve. The murmurs turned to shouts. $3,000 represented months of hard labor for every miner in town, their security against lean times, their children's future. Who had access? Someone called out. Only me, Tyler replied. I kept the box in the mining office, locked tight every night. Etta pushed closer, drawn by a mixture of concern and curiosity. The horse's symptoms were familiar somehow. Her grandmother had taught her about plants and their effects. This looked like oleander poisoning, but oleander didn't grow wild in this area. Miss Harper, Tyler's voice cut through her thoughts. You were asking about the mining office just last week. Every eye turned toward her. The crowd's energy shifted, focusing like a lens in sunlight. Etta felt heat rise in her cheeks. I was admiring the building, she said carefully. Asked about its history. Seemed mighty interested in our business operations, Tyler continued. His voice carried disappointment rather than accusation, which somehow made it worse. Asking about schedules, security measures. Mrs. Patterson, the banker's wife, stepped forward. She knows about plants and such. Mentioned her grandmother taught her about herbs. The circle tightened around Etta. Faces that had smiled at her yesterday now showed suspicion and fear. She recognized the transformation. Had seen it before in other places when times turned hard and people needed someone to blame. I use herbs for dyeing fabric, Etta explained. Common plants for setting colors. What kind of plants? Dr. Mitchell asked. Etta's mouth went dry. Any answer would sound suspicious now. Knowledge that had once seemed innocent became evidence of guilt in their frightened minds. Various kinds, she managed. Tyler shook his head sadly. I wanted to believe the best of people, give everyone a fair chance. But $3,000 doesn't just vanish. Sheriff Williams arrived, breathing hard from his run. He surveyed the scene with tired eyes. What's the situation? Horse poisoned, money stolen, Tyler explained. Miss Harper here was found examining the scene. She's got knowledge of plant poisons. The sheriff looked uncomfortable. He was a decent man, but weak, the kind who followed the crowd's lead rather than making hard decisions. That true, miss? You were here, Etta nodded. I heard the horse crying out, came to see if I could help. In the middle of the night, early morning, just before dawn, suspicious glances passed between the townspeople. What kind of person wandered around before sunrise? What innocent reason could there be? Mrs. Brennan pushed through the crowd. Etta's a good girl, been nothing but helpful since she arrived. Nobody's questioning her character, Tyler said gently. But facts are facts. The money's gone and she was found at the scene. With knowledge of poisons, added Dr. Mitchell. The sheriff's shoulders sagged under the weight of expectation. $3,000 was serious money. The territorial judge wouldn't arrive for months. The town needed justice now. We'll have to hold you for questioning, he told Etta. On what evidence? Mrs. Brennan demanded. Circumstantial but strong, Tyler replied. Opportunity, knowledge, and presence at the scene, plus her excessive interest in our operations. The crowd murmured agreement. The logic seemed sound to them. Who else could it be? Etta felt the walls closing in. Every kindness she'd received now seemed conditional. Every smile had been temporary. The acceptance she'd worked so hard to earn crumbled like sand. I didn't do this, she said. But her words carried no weight against their fear and Tyler's gentle accusations. He never raised his voice or showed anger. That made him seem reasonable, trustworthy. A reluctant accuser forced by evidence to point fingers. Search her room, someone shouted. Check for the missing money, called another. Sheriff Williams looked apologetic but determined. I'm sorry, miss. For everyone's safety, you'll need to come with me. They marched her through town like a common criminal. Windows opened as word spread. Children stared from doorways. The seamstress who had mended their clothes was now the villain who stole their security. The makeshift jail was a storage room behind the sheriff's office. One small window. A cot and a bucket. The door's lock clicked with finality. Outside, voices rose and fell as the crowd discussed her fate. No territorial judge for months. $3,000 stolen. A town's livelihood threatened. The conversation turned to solutions. Quick solutions. Permanent solutions. Etta sat on the narrow cot and closed her eyes. She had gambled everything on Copper Ridge's acceptance. Now that gamble was about to cost her life. If you are enjoying this story of how quickly acceptance can turn to accusation, don't forget to comment where you are tuning in from to show how this story can connect us across any distances, backgrounds, and hearts. Because what will happen in the next 15 minutes in that makeshift jail will completely change Etta's destiny in ways no one could predict. The voices outside grew louder as afternoon melted into evening. Through her small window, Etta watched shadows lengthen across the desert floor. The crowd had dispersed but reformed twice, each time larger and more agitated. Sheriff Williams brought her water and hardtack at sunset. His hands shook slightly as he set down the tin cup. Folks are scared, he said quietly. That money represented everything to them. I understand their fear, but I'm innocent. He wouldn't meet her eyes. Evidence is what matters in situations like this. After he left, Etta heard him talking to Deputy Carson outside. Their words carried through the thin walls. Judge won't be through these parts for 3 months, Carson said. Can't hold her that long, town's too worked up. What are you thinking? A long pause. Thinking we need to resolve this quick, before things get out of hand. Etta's stomach dropped. She recognized the code in their words. Quick resolution meant frontier justice. No lengthy trials or complicated legal procedures, just rope and a sturdy tree branch. The crowd gathered again after full dark. Torches flickered against building walls. casting dancing shadows that made the scene look like something from a nightmare. Tyler addressed them from the steps of the general store. "I know everyone's upset," his voice carried clearly, "but we need to handle this proper." "Proper would be getting our money back," someone shouted. "3 months is too long to wait," called another voice. Tyler raised his hands for quiet. "I share your frustration. That money was our lifeline through winter, our children's future." The crowd murmured angry agreement. Etta could see their faces through her window, decent people transformed by fear and desperation into something harder. "She was found at the scene," Tyler continued, "had knowledge of plant poisons, showed unusual interest in our business operations. The evidence speaks plainly." Mrs. Brennan pushed through the crowd. "You're talking about ending a life based on suspicion." "Based on facts," Tyler corrected gently. "I wish it were otherwise." "What if you're wrong?" "Then justice will sort it out in the end, but we can't risk her escaping with our money, or Confederates coming to free her." The logic sounded reasonable to frightened ears. Better safe than sorry, better quick than careful. Dr. Mitchell stepped forward. "The territorial government expects proper procedures." "The territorial government isn't here," Tyler replied. "We have to protect ourselves." More voices joined the debate. Some argued for patience. Others demanded immediate action. But the momentum clearly favored Tyler's position. Fear and desperation outweighed caution. Through it all, Tyler never raised his voice, never showed anger or hatred. He presented himself as a reluctant leader forced by circumstances to make hard choices. That reasonableness made him more persuasive than any firebrand could have been. "We'll hold a proper trial," he announced. "Tomorrow at dawn. Give her a chance to explain herself." The crowd accepted this compromise. It felt fair and civilized. A trial meant they were following proper procedures. The fact that the outcome was predetermined didn't seem to trouble them. As the crowd dispersed, Etta caught a glimpse of movement near the edge of town. A lone rider sat motionless on horseback, watching the proceedings from the shadows. Even in the darkness, she could see his imposing size. The stranger made no move to join the crowd or call attention to himself. Mrs. Brennan appeared at her window after the others left. "Child, I'm so sorry about all this. You tried to help, that took courage." "Not enough courage, not enough influence." Mrs. Brennan's voice cracked slightly. "Tyler's got them convinced you're guilty." "What do you think?" The older woman was quiet for a long moment. "I think Tyler's been acting strange for months, spending money he shouldn't have, meeting with people he won't introduce. But nobody wants to hear that now." "Will you tell the sheriff?" "Already tried. He says Tyler's a pillar of the community, beyond suspicion." After Mrs. Brennan left, Etta sat alone with the weight of her situation. The trial would be a formality, the verdict already decided. By tomorrow evening she would be dead. She thought about her grandmother's teachings, about plants and their properties, about reading people's true intentions behind their words. Tyler's performance tonight had been masterful. He'd positioned himself as the reluctant voice of reason while steering the crowd toward exactly the conclusion he wanted. But why frame her? What made her a convenient target? The answer was obvious but painful. She was an outsider, had no family or friends to seek justice for her death, no powerful connections to investigate too deeply. Her disappearance would be explained and quickly forgotten. Dawn approached with terrifying speed. Through her window, she watched the eastern sky lighten from black to deep blue to pale gray. Soon the sun would rise on her final day. Footsteps approached her door. Sheriff Williams entered with Deputy Carson. Both men looked grim and uncomfortable. "Time to go," Williams said softly. They escorted her outside where a crowd had already gathered. Men, women, even some children come to witness frontier justice. Their faces showed a mixture of excitement and solemnity. Tyler stood near a hastily constructed platform. He dressed formally for the occasion. His silver watch chain caught the early morning light. "Bring her forward," he called. As they marched her toward what everyone knew would be her execution, Etta whispered a prayer her grandmother had taught her long ago. "Please just make it quick." Then the unexpected happened. If you are enjoying this story of how fear can transform a community into something unrecognizable, don't forget to comment where you are tuning in from to show how this story can connect us across any distances, backgrounds, and hearts. Because what will happen in the next 15 minutes at that makeshift trial will completely change everything everyone believed about justice and truth. The sun painted the desert sky pale gold as they led Etta toward the platform. Her legs felt unsteady beneath her, but she kept her chin raised. The crowd parted like water around her escorts, their faces a mixture of curiosity and grim satisfaction. Tyler stood behind a makeshift podium constructed from mining equipment. His expression was solemn, appropriate for a man reluctantly overseeing justice. The silver watch chain across his vest gleamed in the morning light. "Citizens of Copper Ridge," he began, his voice carrying clearly across the gathered crowd. "We come together in sad circumstances." Etta scanned the faces before her. Mrs. Brennan stood near the back, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. Dr. Mitchell looked uncomfortable but determined. The others showed varying degrees of anger, fear, and anticipation. "The evidence against Miss Harper is substantial," Tyler continued. "Her presence at the scene, her knowledge of plant poisons, her unusual interest in our mining operations." Sheriff Williams positioned Etta near the platform. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the rope around her wrists. This wasn't justice, and some part of him knew it. "Does the accused have anything to say in her defense?" Tyler asked. Etta opened her mouth to speak, but what words could penetrate their certainty? They had already decided her guilt. The trial was merely theater to ease their consciences. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "just make it quick." The crowd shifted restlessly. Some seemed eager for resolution. Others appeared troubled by the reality of what they were about to witness. Then a deep voice cut through the morning air like a blade. "Stop!" Every head turned toward the sound. The stranger from the night before sat tall in his saddle at the edge of the crowd. He was massive, broad-shouldered, and weathered by years of hard living. His horse stood perfectly still beneath him. He dismounted with fluid grace despite his size. His boots hit the ground with authority. The crowd parted as he walked toward the platform, their whispers following in his wake. "Who are you?" Sheriff Williams demanded, his hand moving instinctively toward his gun. "Cyrus Blackwell." The stranger's voice carried the weight of mountains and winter storms. "Former territorial marshal." Tyler's confident expression flickered for just a moment. "This is a local matter, Marshal. We're handling our own justice. I see a mob about to hang an innocent woman without proper legal proceedings." "The evidence is clear," Tyler replied smoothly. "We've followed appropriate procedures for a frontier community." Cyrus studied the scene with pale blue eyes that missed nothing. Etta felt those eyes linger on her face, reading something there that others had missed. "What evidence?" Cyrus asked. Tyler repeated his carefully constructed case. The poisoned horse, the missing money, Etta's presence at the scene and knowledge of plants, her suspicious questions about mining operations. Cyrus listened without interruption. When Tyler finished, the big man nodded thoughtfully. "Circumstantial," he said finally, "might convince a territorial judge after proper investigation, but it's not enough for frontier execution." "We can't wait months for territorial justice," someone called from the crowd. "Our money could be gone forever," shouted another. Cyrus raised one massive hand for silence. When he spoke, his words carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "There's another way to handle this situation." Every eye focused on him. Even Tyler leaned forward, curious despite himself. Cyrus walked directly to Etta. Up close, she could see scars on his hands and a network of fine lines around his eyes. This was a man who had seen too much and survived it all. "Miss Harper," he said formally, "would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" The crowd gasped in collective shock. Etta's mouth fell open. Of all the possible outcomes she had imagined, this wasn't one of them. Tyler recovered first. "That's ridiculous. You can't just marry your way out of criminal charges." Actually, Cyrus replied calmly, under territorial law I can. He turned to address the crowd, his voice carrying the tone of a man explaining legal precedent. When a woman marries, her legal status changes. Any crimes she's accused of become her husband's responsibility. As her legal guardian and a property-owning citizen, I have the right to demand proper investigation rather than mob justice. Sheriff Williams looked confused. Is that actually legal? It's territorial law, Cyrus confirmed. Look it up if you want, but time's wasting while this innocent woman stands under threat of execution. Tyler's mask slipped slightly. You don't even know her. Why would you risk your life for a stranger? Cyrus studied Tyler with those penetrating pale eyes. Because I've seen enough innocent people die due to fear and poor judgment, and because something about your story doesn't sit right with me. My story is the truth, Tyler said firmly. Maybe, but it deserves proper investigation, not a kangaroo court designed to satisfy a mob's bloodlust. The crowd muttered uncertainly. They had come for justice, but this legal maneuvering confused them. Some seemed relieved by the delay. Others appeared frustrated at being denied their resolution. Cyrus extended his calloused hand toward Etta. What do you say? Willing to trust a stranger with your life? Etta looked into his eyes and saw something she hadn't expected. Not pity or condescension, but respect. He was treating her as an equal capable of making her own choice. She placed her bound hands in his. Yes. Then by the authority granted me as a territorial marshal, I pronounce us married under emergency circumstances. Just like that, Etta's life transformed from condemned criminal to legally protected wife. If you are enjoying this story of how one unexpected proposal can change everything in an instant, don't forget to comment where you are tuning in from to show how this story can connect us across any distances, backgrounds, and hearts. Because what will happen next between these unlikely partners will reveal secrets that could shake Copper Ridge to its very foundations. The crowd dispersed slowly, muttering among themselves about the morning's unexpected turn. Tyler's face remained composed, but Etta caught the flash of anger in his eyes before he masked it with disappointment. This changes nothing, he announced to the remaining townspeople. The money is still missing. The truth will come out eventually. Cyrus cut the ropes binding Etta's wrists with a knife from his belt. The hemp fell away, leaving red marks on her dark skin. She rubbed her hands together, trying to restore circulation. We need to talk, he said quietly. Somewhere private. Sheriff Williams stepped forward. Now hold on. Marriage or not, she's still under suspicion. She's under my protection now, Cyrus replied. His tone carried finality. Any legal proceedings go through me. They walked toward Mrs. Brennan's store while curious eyes followed their every step. The old woman met them at the door, her face streaked with dried tears but her expression hopeful. Thank the Lord, she whispered. I thought we were going to witness something terrible. We still might, Cyrus said grimly, unless we find the real thief. Inside the store, Etta studied her unlikely husband. He moved with the controlled grace of a man accustomed to danger. His clothes were well-made but practical. No unnecessary ornamentation or display of wealth. Why did you help me? She asked. Because innocent people shouldn't hang for other men's crimes. How do you know I'm innocent? Cyrus leaned against the counter. Watched you during the accusations. Real guilty people either break down or get defiant. You showed genuine confusion, like someone trying to solve a puzzle they'd been dropped into. Mrs. Brennan poured coffee from a pot warming near the stove. Plus Tyler's been acting strange for months, spending money meeting strangers. I mentioned it to Etta before all this happened. Tell me about these meetings, Cyrus said. The older woman glanced toward the window nervously. Men would ride in after dark, always met with Tyler behind the mining office, never stayed long. Describe them. Rough types, not miners or local businessmen, carried themselves like men accustomed to trouble. Etta remembered her own observations. His clothes are expensive for a foreman's salary. Handmade boots, silver watch, tailored shirts. Could have family money, Cyrus suggested, testing her reasoning. Could, but why hide it? Rich man's son wouldn't need to work as a mining foreman, and wealthy families don't usually let their boys disappear into frontier towns without connections. Cyrus nodded approvingly. Good thinking. What else? He guides every conversation. During the trial, he never seemed angry or upset, more like an actor playing a role. Notice that too. Most men would show real emotion if their prize horse died and their money got stolen. Tyler performed grief instead of feeling it. Mrs. Brennan set down her coffee cup with a sharp clink. Are you saying he killed his own horse? Saying we need to examine the evidence more carefully, Cyrus replied. Starting with that poison. They walked to the scene behind the mining office. The horse's body had been dragged away, but dark stains remained in the dirt. Cyrus knelt and studied the ground with practiced eyes. No signs of struggle. Horse died where it stood, probably drinking from that water trough. Etta examined the area methodically. Her grandmother's teachings had included more than just medicinal herbs. She'd learned to read signs in nature, to notice details others missed. The poison plant Tyler mentioned, she said. Oleander causes these symptoms, but it doesn't grow wild here. Where would someone find it? Gardens, mostly. Brought in from other regions for decoration. Cyrus straightened. Let's look around Tyler's property. They walked the short distance to Tyler's house. It was larger than most in town, well-maintained and freshly painted. A small garden grew behind the building, protected from desert winds by a wooden fence. There, Etta pointed to a cluster of flowering bushes. Oleander. Several branches showed recent damage. Leaves had been stripped away, leaving bare stems. The remaining foliage matched the plant matter they'd seen around the horse's mouth. So Tyler had access to the poison, Cyrus observed. But why kill his own horse? Etta studied the scene more carefully. The damaged oleander bushes were positioned directly above a patch of disturbed earth. Someone had been digging there recently. Look at the ground, she said. Cyrus examined the soil. Definitely been excavated. Recently too, judging by how the dirt hasn't settled. The horse probably ate oleander leaves while Tyler was burying something here. Accidental poisoning. Burying what? The stolen money, most likely. Tyler steals the funds, needs to hide them quickly. Digs a hole behind his house where the oleander grows. Horse wanders over and eats the poisonous leaves. Cyrus nodded grimly. Then Tyler realizes he's created a bigger problem. Dead horse draws attention. He needs to explain both the death and the missing money. So he frames the convenient outsider, Etta finished. Someone with no connections or protection. Mrs. Brennan had followed them from a distance. Now she approached with her face pale but determined. There's something else, she said quietly. Tyler's been selling town supplies to his brother's ranch. Charging us full price but delivering half the goods. Been going on for months. You have proof? Cyrus asked. Inventory records don't match delivery receipts. I handle some of the bookkeeping, so I noticed the discrepancies. Why didn't you report it? Who would I report it to? Tyler handles all the cooperative business. Sheriff Williams trusts him completely. Cyrus looked back toward town, where Tyler was probably spinning new stories to maintain his reputation. We need solid proof before we accuse him publicly. Otherwise, it becomes our word against his, and he's got the advantage. What kind of proof? Etta asked. The kind that's probably buried right under our feet. If you are enjoying this story of how careful investigation reveals the truth behind elaborate deceptions, don't forget to comment where you are tuning in from to show how this story can connect us across any distances, backgrounds, and hearts. Because what Etta and Cyrus are about to uncover will expose corruption that runs deeper than anyone in Copper Ridge ever imagined. They waited until nightfall to investigate further. Cyrus produced a folding shovel from his saddlebags, while Etta and Mrs. Brennan kept watch from different positions around Tyler's property. The earth came up easily in the disturbed area. Someone had definitely been digging here recently. 6 inches down, Cyrus's shovel struck something solid. Metal, he whispered. He cleared dirt away carefully, revealing the corner of a tin box. Not the cooperative's missing lockbox, but something smaller and more personal. Cyrus lifted it out and brushed off the remaining soil. Inside, they found documentation that painted a clear picture of Tyler's operations. Receipts from his brother's ranch showing inflated payments for town supplies. Bills of sale for mining equipment that never reached Copper Ridge. A detailed ledger tracking months of systematic theft. "He's been stealing from the town for over a year," Etta said, studying the numbers by lamplight back in Mrs. Brennan's store. "More than stealing," Cyrus observed. "Building a network. Look at these names." The ledger listed contacts in 3 different territories, men who specialized in moving stolen goods and laundering money. Tyler hadn't been acting alone. Mrs. Brennan traced one entry with her finger. "This matches a discrepancy I noticed 6 months ago. Ordered 10 sacks of flour, only received 5. But the town paid for 10. Etta noted from the corresponding receipt. Tyler's brother bought the missing supplies at half price and resold them elsewhere, Cyrus concluded. Clean profit with no risk. The operation was more sophisticated than simple theft. Tyler had created a systematic way to drain resources from Copper Ridge while maintaining his reputation as a trustworthy leader. "Where's the 3,000 from the cooperative fund?" Mrs. Brennan asked. Cyrus studied the dates in the ledger. "Probably already moved through his network. That money's long gone by now." But they had solid evidence of Tyler's guilt. The buried documentation proved months of deliberate fraud. Combined with the oleander evidence and Tyler's suspicious behavior, it painted a clear picture. "We need to present this to the town," Etta said. "Carefully," Cyrus warned. "Tyler's got their trust. He'll try to discredit us if we move too quickly." The next morning brought unwelcome news. Tyler had called another town meeting, claiming new evidence against Etta. Word spread quickly through Copper Ridge that justice had only been delayed, not denied. "He's forcing our hand," Cyrus observed as they watched townspeople gather in the street. "What new evidence could he possibly have?" Mrs. Brennan wondered. They got their answer when Sheriff Williams arrived at the store with Deputy Carson and 3 other men. All wore grim expressions and carried weapons. "Sorry about this," Williams said, "but Tyler found more of the missing money in your room, Miss Harper. Need to search the premises again." Etta's heart sank. Tyler had planted evidence while they were investigating his property. The stolen money would be hidden somewhere obvious enough to be discovered quickly. They found it exactly where Tyler intended. A small pouch containing $50 tucked behind a loose board in Etta's room. The serial numbers matched the cooperative's bank records perfectly. "This proves she's guilty," Deputy Carson announced with satisfaction. But Cyrus examined the bills carefully. Something about them bothered him, though he couldn't immediately identify what. "Fresh creases," he noted, "like they were recently folded and handled." "All money gets handled," Carson replied dismissively. "These bills have been stored flat somewhere, then recently creased to fit in this pouch. Look at the fold marks." Etta understood immediately. "If I'd stolen this money yesterday morning, it would still have the original folds from Tyler's lockbox." "Unless you straightened it out," Williams suggested. "Why would someone smooth out stolen money just to fold it differently?" Cyrus asked. But their logic fell on deaf ears. The townspeople had physical evidence now. Actual money from the missing fund discovered in the accused's room. Tyler's credibility remained intact while theirs crumbled. "The marriage was just a trick to buy time," Tyler announced to the crowd, "so she could hide more evidence." "Or retrieve what she'd already hidden," someone called out. The crowd's mood turned uglier. They felt manipulated by the legal maneuvering, cheated out of justice by fancy words and technicalities. "We gave her a chance to prove innocence," Tyler continued. "Instead, she used that time to mock our laws and traditions." Cyrus stepped forward. "We found evidence that Tyler's been stealing from this town for months, but Tyler was ready for this accusation. Desperate lies from desperate people. They're trying to shift blame after being caught red-handed." "Check the ground behind his house," Etta called out. "We found documentation proving systematic theft." "You mean the hole you dug while trespassing on my property?" Tyler replied smoothly. "Convenient how you found evidence after breaking into my garden." The crowd murmured agreement. Tyler's version sounded more credible. Two strangers caught with stolen money, now making wild accusations against a respected community leader. "Show them the ledger," Mrs. Brennan urged, but Tyler shook his head sadly. "Anyone can forge documents, write fake numbers in a book, plant false evidence to confuse honest people." Sheriff Williams looked torn between his duties and the mounting pressure. "I'm sorry, but the evidence is clear. Real money found in her possession." "The marriage doesn't change anything," Tyler added. "She's guilty of theft and her husband's guilty of conspiracy." The crowd pressed closer. Their patience was exhausted. They wanted resolution, and Tyler was giving them simple answers to complex questions. "Both of them," someone shouted. "They're working together." Cyrus's hand moved toward his gun, but Etta touched his arm gently. Violence wouldn't solve this problem. It would only confirm their guilt in the crowd's minds. They were trapped by Tyler's superior planning and the town's desperate need for certainty. If you are enjoying this story of how truth can be twisted by those who understand human nature, don't forget to comment where you are tuning in from to show how this story can connect us across any distances, backgrounds, and hearts. Because what happens next will determine whether justice prevails or whether fear and manipulation win the day in Copper Ridge. The crowd's energy shifted from confusion to determination. Tyler had given them clear evidence and simple explanations. Stolen money found in the accused's room, desperate accusations from guilty parties. The path forward seemed obvious. "We've been patient enough," Tyler announced. "Justice delayed is justice denied." Sheriff Williams nodded reluctantly. "I'm placing both of you under arrest." Cyrus measured the distance to his horse. Too far with this many people watching. Fighting would only confirm their guilt and probably get them both killed. "You're making a mistake," he told Williams. "Evidence doesn't lie," the sheriff replied. "People do." They were marched back to the makeshift jail. This time Cyrus joined Etta in the cramped storage room. The crowd followed, their voices rising as they debated appropriate punishment for conspiracy and theft. Through the small window, Etta watched Tyler orchestrate the discussion. He never pushed too hard or showed excessive emotion, just guided the conversation toward his desired conclusion with masterful skill. "He's good at this," she observed. "Best I've ever seen," Cyrus agreed grimly. "Knows exactly which strings to pull." "How long before they decide our fate?" "Not long. Tyler's building momentum. Won't let it cool down this time." Outside, the debate continued. Some voices argued for proper legal procedures. Others demanded immediate action. But Tyler's influence gradually tipped the scales toward swift resolution. Mrs. Brennan appeared at their window after the crowd thinned. "I'm trying to convince people to wait for the territorial judge." "Any luck?" Cyrus asked. "Some are listening, but Tyler's got most of them convinced you're part of a larger conspiracy. Says more thieves might come to rescue you." Etta pressed her face against the bars. "What about the evidence we found?" "He's dismissed it all as forgeries and lies. Says desperate criminals will say anything to avoid punishment." The sound of hammering echoed from the town square. Someone was constructing something large and wooden. The purpose was obvious to everyone. "They're building a gallows," Mrs. Brennan whispered. Cyrus paced the small cell like a caged wolf. His martial instincts screamed against the injustice, but his options were limited. Tyler had outmaneuvered them completely. "There has to be something we missed," Etta said. "Some flaw in his story." "He's covered everything. The planted money, the accusations, even our investigation. Turned our evidence gathering into proof of guilt." But Etta's mind worked differently. Her grandmother had taught her to look beyond the obvious, to notice details others ignored. Tyler's performance had been nearly perfect, but perfection itself could be suspicious. "The money," she said suddenly. "What about it?" "Tyler said the bills in my room matched the cooperative's bank records." "How did he know the serial numbers?" Cyrus stopped pacing. "He would have had to record them before the theft." Why would someone record serial numbers unless they plan to plant evidence later? The implication hit them both simultaneously. Tyler's preparation had been too thorough. No honest man keeps detailed records of money that gets stolen from him. He recorded those numbers because he knew he'd need to match them later, Cyrus said. But that's still just our word against his, Etta pointed out. Unless we can prove he had access to those specific bills after they were supposedly stolen. Through the window, they could see Tyler directing the gallows construction. He moved with casual confidence, a man certain of his victory. But that confidence might also be his weakness. Mrs. Brennan returned as evening approached. They're planning the execution for tomorrow morning. Tyler convinced them you might have accomplices coming. We need you to do something, Cyrus said urgently. Check Tyler's house again. Look for anything that proves he had access to those bills after the alleged theft. What am I looking for? Bank wrappers, receipt books, anything that shows him handling cooperative money recently. Mrs. Brennan nodded grimly. I'll try, but if I'm caught breaking into his house, you'll join us at the gallows, Etta finished. Don't take unnecessary risks. After she left, they waited in tense silence. The hammering had stopped. Voices carried on the evening breeze as townspeople discussed the morning's proceedings. Some sounded excited about the spectacle. Others seemed troubled but resigned. Tyler made another appearance before the jail, addressing a small crowd that had gathered to see the condemned criminals. His performance was as polished as ever. I take no pleasure in tomorrow's necessity, he said, but Copper Ridge must protect itself from those who would steal our future. What about the territorial authorities? Someone asked. They'll understand when they see the evidence. Clear guilt, proper procedures, appropriate punishment. Tyler's eyes met Etta's through the window. For just a moment his mask slipped. She saw cold calculation behind the facade of reluctant justice. He was enjoying this. Then the mask returned, and he continued his speech about community safety and moral responsibility. The crowd dispersed gradually, leaving them alone with their approaching fate. If Mrs. Brennan doesn't find anything, Etta said quietly. We face tomorrow with our heads high, Cyrus replied. Sometimes that's all you can do. But Etta wasn't ready to accept defeat. Tyler had made one mistake with the serial numbers. There might be others. Men who lived double lives often created small inconsistencies that accumulated over time. The key was finding those flaws before the sun rose on their final day. Near midnight, Mrs. Brennan returned. Her face was flushed with excitement and fear. Found something, she whispered, but it's not what you expected. If you are enjoying this story of how small details can unravel elaborate deceptions, don't forget to comment where you are tuning in from to show how this story can connect us across any distances, backgrounds, and hearts, because what Mrs. Brennan discovered will change everything about how this deadly game plays out in Copper Ridge. Mrs. Brennan pressed a folded paper through the window bars. Her hands shook as she glanced nervously toward the street. Found this in Tyler's desk drawer, hidden under false bottom. Etta unfolded the document carefully. Even in the dim moonlight, she could make out official letterhead. Territorial government seal at the top, signed authorization underneath. It's a letter from territorial authorities, she said, confused. Authorizing Tyler to secure town funds from potential bandit threats. Cyrus examined the paper more closely. Dated 3 days ago, says a gang of outlaws is moving through the area, targeting mining communities. That would explain everything, Mrs. Brennan whispered. Tyler wasn't stealing, he was protecting the money. But something felt wrong to Etta. Tyler's behavior, his expensive clothes, the systematic theft they documented. This letter contradicted everything they'd discovered. Look at the ink, she said suddenly. Cyrus held the paper closer to the window. Fresh, very fresh. This was written recently. The territorial seal is wrong too, Etta observed. My grandmother worked for a government office back east. This seal has the wrong number of stars. Mrs. Brennan's face fell. So it's fake. Completely fake, Cyrus confirmed. Tyler created this as insurance. If anyone got too close to the truth, he'd produce this letter and become the hero instead of the villain. But why leave it where I could find it? Because he wants it to be found, Etta realized. Tomorrow morning, when we present our evidence against him, he'll produce this letter, turn everything around again. The brilliance of Tyler's strategy became clear. He hadn't just planned to frame Etta for the original theft. He'd prepared multiple layers of deception to handle any investigation. "He's going to let us present our case," Cyrus said grimly. "Let us show the buried ledger and the evidence of systematic theft. Then he'll produce this fake authorization and claim he was working undercover to protect the town. The crowd will see him as a hero who was willing to be misunderstood for their safety," Etta added, "while we become the villains who tried to destroy an innocent man's reputation," Mrs. Brennan finished. Dawn approached faster than seemed possible. The gallows stood ready in the town square, its fresh wood gleaming in the early light. Townspeople gathered gradually, their faces showing mixture of excitement and solemn duty. Sheriff Williams arrived to escort them to the proceedings. "Tyler's agreed to let you present your evidence before the sentence is carried out. Show of fairness." They were led to the platform where Tyler waited with practiced solemnity. The crowd pressed closer, eager to hear the condemned criminal's final desperate lies. "Citizens of Copper Ridge," Tyler announced, "before justice is served, we'll allow the accused to present their case." Cyrus stepped forward. "We found evidence that Tyler's been stealing from this community for months." He presented the buried ledger and explained the systematic theft they documented. The crowd listened with growing interest. Some faces showed doubt about Tyler's innocence. Etta added her observations about the oleander poisoning and the suspicious circumstances of the horse's death. Her logical presentation impressed several townspeople who hadn't expected such intelligence from someone they dismissed. "These are serious accusations," Dr. Mitchell called out. "If true, they change everything." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Tyler's confident expression began to show cracks. He hadn't expected their evidence to be so compelling. But then he smiled and reached into his coat pocket. "I'm sorry you've all had to hear these lies," he said sadly, "but I understand why they're making desperate accusations." He produced the fake letter with theatrical timing. "The truth is, I've been working under direct orders from territorial authorities to protect our town's assets from a known bandit threat." The crowd gasped. Tyler unfolded the document and read portions aloud, his voice carrying appropriate gravity. "I was ordered to secure all cooperative funds and maintain secrecy about the operation, even if it meant being misunderstood by my own neighbors." "Why didn't you tell us?" someone shouted. "Because the bandits have informants in frontier communities. One wrong word could have compromised the entire operation." The crowd's mood shifted again. Tyler's story explained everything they'd witnessed. His secretive behavior, the missing money, even his expensive clothes could be explained as necessary for his undercover work. "So you've been protecting us all along," Mrs. Patterson said wonderingly. "At great personal cost," Tyler replied. "Knowing some of you would doubt me, question my integrity, but duty demanded sacrifice." Etta felt the trap closing around them. Tyler had turned their evidence into proof of his heroism. The systematic theft became careful protection. The secretive meetings became necessary security measures. "The letter's a forgery," she called out desperately, but Tyler shook his head sadly. "Of course they'd claim that. Criminals will say anything when facing justice." "Check the territorial seal," Cyrus urged. "The number of stars is wrong." "Desperate people notice flaws that don't exist," Tyler replied smoothly. "See conspiracies in innocent documents." The crowd was convinced. Their respected leader had been working secretly to protect them, while two criminals tried to destroy his reputation with lies and forged evidence. "Enough delays," someone shouted. "Tyler's proven his innocence." "Time for real justice," called another voice. But Etta had noticed something Tyler missed in his moment of triumph, something about the letter that even he hadn't considered. She stepped forward with sudden confidence. If you are enjoying this story of how the truth can be twisted into lies and lies presented as truth, don't forget to comment where you are tuning in from to show how this story can connect us across any distances, backgrounds, and hearts, because Eda's about to expose a fatal flaw that Tyler never saw coming. Eda stepped forward with quiet authority. The crowd fell silent, surprised by her confident demeanor. Even Tyler looked curious about what desperate lie she might attempt. "Mr. Tyler," she said clearly, "if you were protecting the town's money from bandits, where is it now?" Tyler's smile remained steady. "Hidden safely until the territorial authorities collect it. Then you can produce it immediately to prove your story. The location must remain secret until the operation concludes." "How convenient," Eda replied. "A secret location that can't be verified." The crowd began to murmur. Her point was logical. If Tyler had the money for protection, he should be able to prove it. But Tyler recovered smoothly. The bandits could have informants in this very crowd. Revealing the location would compromise everything. Eda nodded as if accepting his explanation. Then she struck at the heart of his deception. "Your letter is dated 3 days ago, but you reported the theft yesterday morning." Tyler's confident expression flickered slightly. "I don't understand the relevance. If you received orders to hide the money 3 days ago, why did you report it stolen yesterday? Why blame me for a theft that never happened?" The crowd's attention sharpened. This was a direct contradiction in Tyler's story. "I had to maintain the deception," Tyler said, but his voice lacked its earlier certainty. "Make everyone believe the money was actually stolen, including accusing an innocent person of murder and theft. Regrettable but necessary for the operation's success." Eda let that statement hang in the air. Tyler had just admitted to knowingly framing an innocent person. The crowd looked uncomfortable with this revelation. "So you were willing to let me hang to protect your secret?" Tyler's political instincts kicked in. "I would never have let actual harm come to you. The authorities would have arrived in time." "What authorities? Your letter says the operation is secret. How would they know to intervene?" Tyler opened his mouth, but no immediate answer came. Eda had found the fatal flaw in his improvised explanation. Cyrus stepped forward to press the advantage. "You claimed the territorial government ordered this operation, but they wouldn't authorize letting innocent people die for cover stories." "Sometimes difficult choices must be made," Tyler replied, but sweat beaded on his forehead. "Show us the money then," Dr. Mitchell called out. "If you're protecting it, produce it now." Other voices joined the demand. Tyler's moment of triumph was crumbling as the crowd's logic overcame their initial relief. "The operation isn't complete," Tyler insisted. "I can't compromise security." "Whose security?" Eda asked pointedly. "The town's money or your escape plan?" Tyler's mask finally began to crack. "These are dangerous accusations from desperate criminals." "Then prove us wrong," Cyrus challenged. "Take us to where you've hidden the money." "I've explained why that's impossible." "Because there is no money," Eda said with absolute certainty. "Because you spent it months ago through your network of contacts. The $3,000 is long gone." She turned to address the crowd directly. "Mr. Tyler killed his own horse by accident while burying evidence of his theft. Then he created an elaborate story to cover his mistakes." "Lies," Tyler said, but his voice had lost its commanding tone. "The horse ate oleander leaves growing above where you buried your ledgers," Eda continued. "You panicked when it died and decided to frame me for both crimes." Mrs. Brennan stepped forward with renewed courage. "The bookkeeping discrepancies I mentioned, they match exactly with the dates in Tyler's buried ledger." "Forged documents," Tyler said weakly. "Then explain the oleander behind your house," Cyrus demanded. "Explain the fresh dig marks. Explain why you recorded the serial numbers of money that was supposedly stolen from you." Tyler looked around desperately. The crowd's mood had shifted completely. Doubt and suspicion replaced their earlier certainty. "You recorded those numbers because you knew you'd need to plant matching bills later," Eda pressed. "No honest man prepares evidence to frame others for his own crimes." The territorial letter explains everything. Tyler tried again. The fake letter with the wrong seal and fresh ink, Dr. Mitchell observed. He had examined the document during the discussion. This was written recently with materials available in town. Sheriff Williams finally found his voice. Tyler, if you've got nothing to hide, show us the money. I've explained the security concerns. Then we'll search your property, Williams decided. If you're innocent, you've got nothing to fear. Tyler's composure cracked completely. You can't search without proper warrants. Same law that let you accuse her without proper evidence, Cyrus pointed out. The crowd pressed closer. Their respected leader's credibility was dissolving before their eyes. Questions came from multiple directions, each one harder to answer than the last. Where are the bandits you're supposedly protecting us from? Why haven't territorial authorities contacted Sheriff Williams? How long were you planning to let innocent people die for your cover story? Tyler raised his hands for silence, but his authority was gone. The crowd saw him clearly now. Not a protective leader, but a sophisticated thief caught in his own web of lies. This is all a misunderstanding, he said desperately, but Etta wasn't finished. She had one more revelation that would end his deception forever. Mr. Tyler, she said with devastating calm, there's one more thing your story can't explain. The crowd waited breathlessly. If you were protecting the money from bandits, why did you poison your own horse to hide where you buried it? Tyler's face went pale as the final piece clicked into place for everyone watching. If you are enjoying this story of how methodical reasoning can unravel even the most elaborate lies, don't forget to comment where you are tuning in from to show how this story can connect us across any distances, backgrounds, and hearts. Because Tyler's web of deception is about to collapse completely under the weight of undeniable truth. Tyler's face drained of color as Etta's final question hung in the desert air. The crowd waited in absolute silence, watching their former leader struggle with an impossible contradiction. I didn't poison the horse, he said weakly. Then how did it die from oleander poisoning directly above where you buried your stolen ledgers? Etta pressed. Tyler's mouth opened and closed like a man drowning in his own lies. Every explanation led to deeper contradictions. Every denial revealed new guilt. The horse must have wandered there naturally, he tried. Your prize stallion that never left your property without supervision, Dr. Mitchell interjected. The horse you trained personally and kept on a strict routine, Sheriff Williams stepped forward with grim determination. Tyler, I'm placing you under arrest for theft and conspiracy. This is madness, Tyler sputtered. You're believing criminals over a respected member of this community. But his protest carried no weight. The crowd had seen through his performance. Their anger was building as they realized how completely he had manipulated them. You would have let us hang innocent people, Mrs. Patterson said with disgust. Nearly turned us into murderers for your lies, added another voice. Tyler backed away from the advancing sheriff, his silver watch chain catching the morning light. I've served this community faithfully for years. While stealing our money and supplies, Mrs. Brennan said firmly, while selling our goods to your brother at half price. Deputy Carson moved to flank Tyler from the other side. The crowd formed a loose circle, cutting off escape routes. Tyler's eyes darted desperately between faces that had once shown respect and trust. Where's the $3,000? Williams demanded. Tyler's shoulders sagged as his final defenses crumbled. Gone. Sent east through my contacts weeks ago. The admission hit the crowd like a physical blow. Their winter security, their children's future, converted to Tyler's personal profit and already beyond recovery. Why? Someone called out. Tyler straightened slightly, some of his old arrogance returning. Because I deserved better than scraping by in this desert wasteland. I had connections, opportunities. The money was just sitting there earning nothing. That money belonged to all of us, Dr. Mitchell said coldly. You would have wasted it on supplies and equipment. I invested it in real opportunities. His casual dismissal of their collective sacrifice enraged the crowd further. These people had contributed to the cooperative fund through months of dangerous mining work and careful saving. "Search his house," Williams ordered. "Find whatever evidence remains." A group of men headed toward Tyler's property while others secured the area around the gallows. The wooden structure that had been built for Etta and Cyrus now seemed destined for its true target. Tyler must have realized his fate because he suddenly broke for the edge of town. His expensive boots slipped in the loose sand as he ran toward the desert. Deputy Carson tackled him before he made it 20 yards. They dragged him back to face the crowd's judgment. His carefully maintained appearance was disheveled now, dust coating his fine clothes and silver watch chain. "I want a proper trial," Tyler demanded. "Full legal proceedings." "Like you gave us?" Etta asked pointedly. "I have rights under territorial law." Cyrus studied the man who had nearly murdered 2 innocent people to cover his crimes. "Same rights you were willing to deny us." The search party returned from Tyler's house with additional evidence. More forged documents, correspondence with criminal contacts, a detailed plan for disappearing with the cooperative's funds. "He's been planning this for over a year," Williams announced. "Got letters here discussing the best routes out of the territory." Tyler's elaborate scheme was laid bare for all to see. The systematic theft, the network of accomplices, the cold calculation behind framing Etta for his crimes. "What about the horse?" someone asked. Tyler looked defeated but answered honestly. "Buried the ledgers behind my house. The animal ate oleander leaves while I was digging. Didn't realize the danger until it was too late." "So you decided to use its death to frame an innocent woman," Mrs. Brennan said with disgust. "She was convenient," Tyler admitted without shame. "An outsider with no protection. No one would investigate too deeply." His callous honesty shocked even those who had turned against him. This wasn't desperation or temporary madness. It was calculated evil disguised as respectability. The crowd's mood turned ugly. They had been manipulated, stolen from, and nearly turned into accomplices to murder. Their trust had been betrayed by someone they had respected and followed. "Hang him now," someone shouted. "Use his own gallows," called another voice. But Sheriff Williams raised his hands for order. "We'll do this proper. Legal proceedings, fair trial, appropriate punishment." "He didn't give us fair proceedings," a miner protested. "Which is why we're better than him," Williams replied firmly. Etta felt profound relief as justice finally emerged from the chaos Tyler had created. But she also felt something else, a deep sadness for how close they had all come to irreversible evil. Tyler was secured in the same makeshift jail where she and Cyrus had spent their final night. The irony wasn't lost on anyone present. As the crowd gradually dispersed, townspeople approached Etta and Cyrus with apologies and gratitude. Their shame at being so easily manipulated was obvious and genuine. "We should have listened," Dr. Mitchell said. "Should have questioned more carefully. Fear makes people do foolish things," Etta replied gently. "What matters is learning from the experience." Mrs. Brennan embraced her with tears of relief and joy. "Thank God you're safe. Thank God we found the truth in time." The morning that had begun with the promise of execution ended with justice served and innocence vindicated. If you are enjoying this story of how truth ultimately prevails over elaborate deception, don't forget to comment where you are tuning in from to show how this story can connect us across any distances, backgrounds, and hearts, because Etta and Cyrus's journey in Copper Ridge is far from over. 3 days after Tyler's arrest, the town felt different. The fear and suspicion that had gripped Copper Ridge began lifting like morning fog in desert heat. People walked straighter, spoke more freely, looked each other in the eye again. Etta sat in her room above Mrs. Brennan's store, working on a delicate embroidery pattern. The familiar rhythm of needle through fabric helped calm her thoughts after the chaos of recent events. A knock at her door interrupted the peaceful work. Cyrus stood in the hallway, hat in hand, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "We need to discuss our arrangement," he said carefully. They walked to the small table near the window where morning light illuminated the desert landscape beyond town. The conversation they both knew was coming had been postponed. while more urgent matters demanded attention. The marriage was legal under territorial law, Cyrus began, but it was done under emergency circumstances. To save my life, Etta acknowledged. I'll never forget that debt. It's not a debt. It was the right thing to do. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both aware that their unusual partnership had evolved beyond simple legal necessity. What happens now? Etta asked. Whatever you want to happen. We can annul the marriage immediately. No questions asked, no legal complications. Etta studied his weathered face. And if I don't want it annulled immediately, then we take time to figure out what we both actually want. No pressure, no expectations. The town square below showed signs of gradual recovery. Men worked to dismantle the gallows that had nearly claimed their lives. Women gathered in small groups, rebuilding the social connections that Tyler's manipulation had damaged. I've been thinking about staying in Copper Ridge, Cyrus said. Sheriff Williams asked if I'd consider taking the marshal position permanently. What did you tell him? That I'd think about it, been drifting too long. Maybe it's time to put down roots somewhere. Etta set down her needle and thread. This town nearly killed us both. But it didn't, and now it has a chance to become something better. She appreciated his optimism, but the memory of facing death remained fresh. The ease with which decent people had turned into a mob still troubled her. They were so quick to believe the worst, she said. Fear does that to people, but they were also quick to accept the truth once it was properly presented. Mrs. Brennan appeared in the doorway with a tea tray. Hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Just discussing our future, Etta replied. Good timing then. Town council wants to make you both an official offer. She poured tea into 3 cups, her movements precise despite her obvious excitement about whatever news she carried. They're proposing to hire Cyrus as the new marshal. Full territorial authority, decent salary, housing provided. And Etta? Cyrus asked. Mrs. Brennan's smile widened. They want to offer her a position as town advisor. Someone to help with planning, problem-solving, making sure important decisions get proper consideration. Etta nearly dropped her teacup. They want to pay me to think. Your intelligence saved this community. They recognize its value now. The offer was unprecedented. Etta had never heard of a frontier town formally employing someone for their analytical skills. Most communities barely acknowledged that women possessed such abilities. There's more, Mrs. Brennan continued. They're establishing a fund to help you start a proper seamstress business. New equipment, quality materials, whatever you need. Why? Etta asked, genuinely puzzled by the generosity. Because they feel guilty about almost hanging an innocent woman, and because they're not stupid enough to let valuable skills leave town. Cyrus leaned back in his chair. Sounds like Copper Ridge is serious about changing. Dr. Mitchell says they learned something important about the danger of mob thinking. Want to put safeguards in place to prevent future manipulations. The tea was strong and hot, warming Etta from the inside as she considered the unexpected opportunities. A few days ago, she had faced death as a despised outsider. Now the same community was offering her respect, security, and meaningful work. What about Tyler? She asked. Territorial judge will be here next month for a proper trial, but his guilt is obvious. He'll probably get sent to the prison in Yuma. And the stolen money, Mrs. Brennan's expression sobered. Long gone, like he said. The community will have to rebuild their reserves slowly. That's going to be hard on families. It will, but they'll manage. People here are tougher than they sometimes appear. Etta thought about the offer while studying the desert landscape beyond her window. The harsh beauty had grown on her during her short time in Copper Ridge. The community's resilience impressed her despite their recent failures. I'd like to accept both positions, she said finally. The advisory role and the seamstress business. And the marriage situation, Mrs. Brennan asked with careful neutrality. Etta looked at Cyrus. I think we should take time to get to know each other properly. See if this partnership was just about survival or something more substantial. Agreed, Cyrus replied. No rush, no pressure. just two people figuring out what they want from life. Mrs. Brennan nodded approvingly. Sensible approach. You've both got time to build whatever relationship feels right. Outside, the sound of construction replaced the earlier hammering of Gallows building. New projects, positive changes, hope replacing fear. When would you want to start the advisory work? Mrs. Brennan asked. Immediately. This community needs help developing better decision-making processes. And the marshal position, she asked Cyrus. Soon as Williams is ready to step down. He's earned his retirement. The future felt full of possibilities rather than threats for the first time since Etta had arrived in Copper Ridge. If you are enjoying this story of how second chances can transform both individuals and entire communities, don't forget to comment where you are tuning in from to show how this story can connect us across any distances, backgrounds, and hearts. Because the final chapter of Etta and Cyrus's story will reveal how much can change when people choose growth over fear. 6 months had transformed Copper Ridge into something unrecognizable from the frightened community that had nearly executed 2 innocent people. The changes ran deeper than new buildings and repaired streets. They touched the very soul of how people related to each other. Etta stood in her expanded seamstress shop, examining a wedding dress she was creating for the banker's daughter. The intricate beadwork caught morning sunlight streaming through enlarged windows. Her business had grown beyond simple alterations to custom garments that people traveled from other towns to commission. But the seamstress work was only part of her contribution to Copper Ridge. 3 afternoons each week, she met with the town council as their official advisor. Her analytical mind helped them navigate complex decisions with careful consideration rather than emotional reactions. The advisory position had already prevented 2 potential disasters. When drought threatened the water supply, Etta's systematic research identified 3 new well locations. When a dispute arose between miners and merchants, her mediation process found solutions that satisfied both groups. People sought her opinion on everything from business investments to family conflicts. The woman who had once been dismissed as an outsider now commanded respect throughout the territory. Marshal Cyrus Blackwell made his evening rounds with steady confidence. The badge on his chest carried real authority, but he used it sparingly. His reputation for fairness and intelligence had spread to neighboring communities. Other towns sometimes requested his help with complicated legal matters. Tyler's trial had concluded 2 months earlier with a guilty verdict and a sentence to 15 years in territorial prison. The proceedings had been conducted with scrupulous attention to proper procedures. No mob justice, no emotional outbursts, just careful presentation of evidence and thoughtful deliberation. The stolen money remained unrecovered, but the community had adapted. They'd established new safeguards for financial management and diversified their economic base beyond just mining. Etta's business advice had helped several families start successful enterprises. Mrs. Brennan closed her store each evening with satisfaction. Her faith in Etta had been vindicated completely. The general store had become an informal community center where people gathered to discuss local issues and seek advice. She watched Cyrus approach Etta's shop as shadows lengthened across the desert. Their relationship had developed slowly and naturally over the months. No rush, no pressure, just 2 people discovering genuine compatibility. They took evening walks together, discussing everything from territorial politics to desert botany. Cyrus appreciated Etta's intelligence and analytical approach to problems. Etta valued his calm strength and unwavering sense of justice. The marriage question remained unresolved by mutual agreement. Both felt their partnership growing stronger, but neither wanted to force decisions based on legal convenience rather than genuine emotion. "How was the council meeting?" Cyrus asked as Etta locked her shop. "Productive. We approved funding for the new school building. With your suggested modifications to the design, better ventilation and natural lighting, children learn more effectively in comfortable environments." They walked toward the edge of town, where the desert stretched endlessly under a sky painted gold and purple by the setting sun. This had become their routine, a peaceful conclusion to busy days. "Any word from the territorial capital about the new courthouse?" Etta asked. "Approved and funded. Construction starts next spring." Your recommendation carried weight with the territorial governor. Your detailed proposal made the recommendation easy to support. Their collaborative approach had become the foundation of their relationship. Each contributed different skills and perspectives, creating solutions neither could have developed alone. Dr. Mitchell approached from his evening house calls. "Marshall, Miss Harper. Good to see you both. How's the Peterson baby?" Etta asked. "Strong and healthy. Mrs. Peterson asked me to thank you for the blankets you made." "My pleasure. Nothing too fine for new life in this world." Dr. Mitchell had become one of Etta's strongest supporters on the town council. He often said her appointment as advisor was the smartest decision Copper Ridge had ever made. The town's transformation extended beyond individual success stories. People thought more carefully before making accusations. They sought multiple perspectives on controversial issues. They valued intelligence and analysis over quick emotional responses. Children playing in the streets represented the future Etta and Cyrus were helping to build. A community where differences were discussed rather than feared. Where justice meant careful investigation rather than mob reaction. Where leadership meant service rather than manipulation. "I received a letter today," Cyrus said as they paused near the old mining office, "from the Territorial Marshal Service, offering you a promotion, requesting my help training other frontier lawmen in proper investigative procedures." Etta smiled. "Your reputation is spreading." "Our reputation, the methods we developed together." The sun touched the horizon, painting the desert in shades of fire. Soon stars would emerge in the clear desert sky, mapping patterns that had guided travelers for generations. "Are you considering the offer?" Etta asked. "Only if you think it would benefit other communities to learn what we've learned here. I think scared people everywhere deserve better than mob justice. Then we'll discuss it with the council. See if they can spare us for occasional training missions." The evening air carried the scent of desert flowers and the sound of families gathering for dinner. Copper Ridge had become a place of hope rather than fear, growth rather than suspicion. Etta took Cyrus's offered arm as they walked back toward town. Their future remained unwritten, full of possibilities they were discovering together. The partnership that had begun with desperate necessity had evolved into something neither had expected but both treasured. And that is all to the story for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.